We're gonna make it look fly with some DIY. We're gonna make it look fly with some DIY. We're gonna make it look fly with some DIY. Uh-oh, thrift diving.
Hey, what's up? It's Serena Pia from ThriftDiving.com, which is do-it-yourself blog, YouTube channel, and podcast that helps you decorate, improve, and maintain your home with paint, power tools, and thrift stores without sacrificing your budget, the environment, or style. Welcome to episode 125 of the Thrift Diving Podcast. Today we are doing something completely different because I am actually recording my podcast on my computer, and I'm also recording this as a YouTube video. I've never done that before. Too many moving parts for me. And I thought this would be cool because for the most part, I don't let people know on my podcast, on my podcast that I have a YouTube channel. But on my YouTube channel, I don't know if you know that I have a podcast. So I thought this would be a great idea to marry the two together so that you can listen on the podcast. If you want to go to YouTube and listen to it, you can actually see me. Not that I'm going to be doing anything special, but if you just want to have a conversation and see me talking to you, to the screen, then join me on YouTube. You can find the link down below in the show notes. And if you are new to this podcast, if you are on my YouTube channel and you don't know that I have a podcast, where have you been? There's 125 episodes. And I do believe we're going to have a good episode today because it's been 2 years. I can't believe it. 2 years since I've had my she shed. And that's where I'm filming right now. That's where I'm recording this podcast from my she shed. And I figured since it's been almost a 2-year anniversary, this would be a great opportunity to talk about what are those things that I wish I would have done differently with getting my she shed, and what are the things that I'm glad that I did. And I have some other content that I've been doing on my blog, 10 questions. Actually, it's more like 15, probably 17 questions that you should be asking before you get a she shed. I know a lot of you who watch some of my projects on my YouTube channel, you may see all of these things that I'm doing and feel inspired. Maybe you want to get your own she shed, but there's a lot of things that you may not realize. And so I won't go into all of them, but I'm going to cover the things that now that I've been in this shed for 2 years, almost 2 years, and I cannot believe I'm looking over here at the workbench and there's still like stuff in boxes. Like I have not even fully unpacked, which is insane. But considering that I procrastinate as much as I do, I'm not really that surprised. So for today's episode, I wanted to talk about what are those things that I wish that I had done differently. Now that I've been in the shed for 2 years, I have a better idea of what my needs are, how I've been using the shed. And if I were to make the decision today to get a shed, as you may be doing, what are those things that I would consider? What are the things that you should consider? Okay, so let's for those of you who are new, who don't know that I have a she shed, I will just tell you a very short summary. So September of 2021, I decided to get a 16 by 26 she shed, right, in my yard. And it honestly doesn't even look like a she shed. It's more of a studio. I mean, if we want to be exact, it looks like a tiny home. I mean, right now, by this point, I've got garden beds out front. I may as well just put a freaking mailbox there and have my kids deliver my mail to the she shed because it looks like a tiny home. It's not even a shed. But, you know, when I say she shed, people know what I'm talking about. And they know that it's not like just some broken down place where I'm storing tools and it's dirty. Like that's not what it is. It really actually serves as office space. This is where I'm working from here in this little corner. And it also serves as a place for me to do projects. Now, I've not done a ton of projects outside of the shed because really in the last couple of years, I've been trying to get this shed together. I just literally built the deck on the front of the shed. It's been 2 years. I was using a pallet, stepping up from the pallet into the shed. And I am kind of embarrassed to admit that I've actually fallen into that pallet a couple of times. You know, and it's funny because when you fall, right, you always look around to see who sees you. Me, I just laugh it off, but I'm like, wow, did my family see that? But yeah, so I've been doing projects in the shed. And some of them I've been working on the shed, but I've also been working in the shed too. So let me just go through some of the things that I wish that I had considered 2 years ago when I got the shed. I really wish that I had gotten running water. Now, here's what a contractor friend told me. if you're bringing water to your shed, for the most part, that's not a big deal, right? Like you could do a sink. You don't even have to put like, this is probably not the correct terms. You don't even need to have a place for the water to go. It literally could run off into your garden. It's not hard to bring water. I don't think it's very expensive to bring fresh water to your shed. And again, having it run off into the garden, it's watering the plants, not a big deal. Where you really get into the cost is if you wanted to put a toilet, right? Because that's a whole different system. Well, you have to actually go and connect the waistline to all the way to the street. And of course it has to be, you're making sure that it's like the proper grade, and it's nothing that you can do on your own for the most part. Like you have to get the water company to come in and take care of that. A plumber, and then of course connecting it to the, you know what I'm trying to say. But it's not an inexpensive task, I've been told. Now, I haven't actually priced it out yet, so I don't know how much that would cost. You notice the word yet, because part of me is just curious. I just want to know, how much would it cost to bring water here, and how much would it cost to put a toilet? Now, I just volunteered with Habitat for Humanity, and I was showing them pictures of my shed. And they pointed out to me, hey, Serena, there's a lot of camping toilets that are pretty high quality that you don't even have to connect it to anything. I mean, there's all kinds of ways that you can minimize the smell. And I am not pooping in my shed. I'm just putting it out there. I'm not pooping. I will do that inside of my house. But when I'm out here working, or even if I'm just really into a blog post or editing video, even though it's only 20 paces to get from, it's probably about 20, 25 paces to get from the shed into the house, having to do that, stopping to go pee, is a pain in the butt. It really is. So it would be nice if there was a toilet out here. Now, if you're washing paintbrushes, which I do often if I'm in here working, or I just want to wash my hands, right? I'm in here cleaning up or wiping the filters in my mini split. I need to wash my hands, and there's no running water. There's times I've been in here stripping furniture, and I've wanted to just kind of wipe up and clean things up. You get a little spill on the floor. I've got to go into the house, get a bucket of water, come back to clean furniture, to wipe things up, and it's not convenient. So if you are considering getting a she shed in 2023, 2024, this next year, definitely consider putting that into the plan. And when you do that, though, at least here in Montgomery County, Maryland, it changes the entire nature of your project, right? Because here's the thing. Once you start creating livable space, your government, your county, local, whatever government, city government, is going to look at you a little differently and say, oh, well, wait a minute, this is not really a shed. You're actually creating livable space. And so when you start crossing that line, then now you're in a whole bunch of other building codes requirements. And, you don't want to have to then put, what do you call it? The fire. Oh, I can't think of it. What's the name? Yeah. When there's a fire and there, I can't think of the name, and this is the thing, I'm recording, so I'm not stopping this. And the people that listen to my podcast, they know that when I make mistakes, I don't stop recording. So if I can't find a word and can't think of it, we're just going to keep rolling. That's just how we do here at Thrift Diving. It's not about perfection. But yeah, there's certain requirements that you have to have when you build a new building. And it doesn't matter if it's in your backyard. If you are enclosing that space, if you're putting air conditioning in there and all of these things as livable space, you now have to do, there's fire codes, there's all kinds of building codes that you have to adhere to. So when I was actually getting my shed, I had been told when submitting the permit, it's a shed. And if you're watching this video, you can see my face. It's a shed, quotation marks. That's what I had been told. And I won't say who told me to say that, but a professional had said, only submit that permit as a shed. And if you are going to have it as living space, I will tell you, and this is the next point that I probably would have done differently is, well, I actually have 2 floors here in my shed. Let me explain. So when I was getting the shed, I wasn't sure if I was going to do 2 different types of building. So I ordered it from Tough Shed. And when I had placed my order, they had a few different options. They had like a garage type shed, and then they had the tall, I don't remember what this was called, but it was like the tall building. And the one that I ordered actually has like a metal subfloor. So that could go right on gravel. It could go on 6x6 pressure treated wood with gravel, and that's fine. It does not require concrete. The garage does require concrete because the concrete is the floor. That was the required floor for that type of tough shed. So at the time I said, well, I'll just do the tall shed. And you know, I couldn't decide whether I wanted to do concrete or not, because here's another thing. When you go with the permitting, at least in my district or my county, when you go with the permit, you have to get a permit. But when you get the permit, they're going to ask you, or they may ask you, is this going to be space that you're using for an office, which they consider to be livable space. Even though you're not living in it, it's still livable space. And if you are having livable space activities, right, an office, a workshop, then they kind of require you to have concrete. And again, if you're just telling them that it's a shed, and I'm not telling you what to do, I shouldn't tell you what to do, then 6x6 pressure treated wood is fine with gravel. That's fine. For me, I knew that I was going to have equipment in here. I wanted to make sure that if anybody came back and questioned me, I have concrete. The only thing is, because I ordered the tall building, and I don't remember the exact name, I will leave a comment, or I will leave a link down below where I'll have an exact description of what I ordered. But when I ordered the tall building, remember, it has metal studs. So I ended up getting concrete, but then I've got a flooring system of metal studs. So I pretty much have 2 floors. And if I could do that all over again, I probably would just do the concrete. And the reason why I didn't, because I had already placed my order maybe 2 weeks before the prices went up. So I'd already locked in a contract. I'd already put with a deposit down. And then I decided, you know what, I'm going to do concrete, and let's change it to the garage. And they're like, well, we had a 15% price markup, like, since you've ordered your shed. So if you make a change, then we're going to have to cancel out your old order and write it up as a new order. And now you're going to have to pay 15% more. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to do that. Let's just keep the original building. I'll do the concrete. It's good to have it because it's livable space. The county would prefer that. And then I will just have 2 floors. So I wish that I'd made some better decisions about what kind of foundation system I wanted and what kind of building I really wanted, because then I think it could have saved me. I don't think it would have saved me money, but it's kind of redundant, right? And I think, for the most part, it's not really that big of a deal. I do notice sometimes when I'm walking in certain seasons, right? Like when it gets cold, I will notice that there's more squeaks because the metal's cold. That kind of annoys me a little bit. But now that I've got some furniture in here, I think and I've got a couple of rugs here underneath the desk. For the most part, I think it doesn't make too much noise. But again, it was redundant. I really didn't need to have another floor. And I think, it probably would have been better with just the concrete. And I think the concrete guy would have finished it off a little bit nicer. But overall, that's minor. So that's something that I would have done differently. I would have just really kind of solidified what it is that I wanted, what I was looking for. And I feel like I was kind of flip-flopping. And by that point, the price changes had already taken effect. So that's one thing I would do differently. I would probably have done this sooner. That's another thing that I regret. I didn't have the financial means to do it any sooner. But if I could have done it sooner, I would have. Maybe I would have built one sooner, because let me tell you, the freedom that I feel coming in here every day, every morning, and just sitting down at my computer in complete silence, or usually I'm listening to a podcast. Usually I'm wearing These headphones, I literally wear them probably about 15, 16 hours a day. And I'm listening to a podcast or I'm listening to music or sometimes just silence if I really want to focus. I love having this space. I love having a place that's indoors, that's clean for the most part, that I can work and I can stretch out. Remember, if you've been following me for a long time, remember I used to work in the garage, and that garage has always been messy. I've always been stepping over things, trying to figure out how am I going to build this project. A good example, I did about 2 years ago. It might be a little bit more than 2 years. I had done a complete closet makeover, built this closet organizer in my 5x7 walk-in closet. And I did that in the garage. That was tough because these were huge, big pieces of plywood that I didn't have the cutting space. I didn't have the Festool tools that I have now. So a lot of the stuff that I was using, I didn't have a vacuum. And so there was just dust everywhere. I mean, I was wearing a mask. It was hot because it was like during the summer, right before, I ended up getting the shed actually. And it just ended up being a horrific project to do with no space. And so now that I've got this space, I think of all those projects that I really struggled. So think about yourself and where you work on projects, right? Like, have you been thinking about a shed? Have you been thinking about even just clearing out one part of the garage so that you've got a place to work on things? Don't wait. Get it done, because when you finally have that ability to be creative, you have the space to be creative, man, it feels, excuse me, it feels so good. Look, I'm going to clear my throat and I'm not even stopping the video or stopping the recording. You're going to get it all in today's episode. So that's one thing I wish that I had done sooner. I wish that I had gotten my shed sooner. And I think the reason why I waited also is because, I had come into kind of a big contract with, oh my gosh, I really need some water here. Why didn't I not bring water in with me? But I really wish that I'd done it sooner, but I got in this huge contract with Home Depot. And this was during was this COVID times? I think it was right around COVID. I'd started doing some work with Home Depot, and then it kind of spilled over into 2021. And when I had these extra funds, I'm like, I think I'm going to do a shed. And I'd always wanted to build one, but in my mind, I thought, well, maybe I'll just build it myself. And I'm glad that I didn't. Oh, that's another thing. I'm glad that I didn't build this shed myself, because I know how slowly I work. And if I had started in, let's say, 2020 during COVID times, I probably would still be working on this building today. Now, technically, I'm still working on the building. Like, I still have a French cleat wall that I want to do. I want to organize all of my tools so that I can just easily grab what I need. I'm still not there yet. I don't have that level of organization. So I'm still working on the space, but I probably would just still be putting on shingles if I had built it myself. So that's one thing. And I'll talk about the things that I'm glad that I did. But going sooner with making this purchase, I wish I would have done that sooner, because I feel like I would have had a lot more fun building some of the things that I had built that really became a source of frustration because I didn't have the space. I also would have gotten help with some of my projects, specifically the insulation. That was tough. So if you get a shed and you want to finish off the interior yourself, like I had done, the insulation, it's not hard to do, but when you get to doing the roof, oh my gosh, it's so cumbersome. These big bats of insulation, trying to get it up the ladder with just one person. And, because it's so big and thick, right? The ones in the ceiling are generally, the R value is a lot thicker for the ones that go in the ceiling than in the wall. In the wall, generally 15, I believe 15 to 19 is what you're going to get on the walls. On the ceiling, the R value is much thicker. And so it's just this big piece of just awkward. And here's the thing, when you're climbing up the ladder, doing this yourself, all of these little particles, no matter how well you think you're protecting yourself, wearing a hat, covering up your neck, wearing a mask, whatever. You should wear a mask. However you think that you're protecting yourself, it doesn't matter, because all of these little particles are raining down on you, and it's itching you all over, and you can't even see it. It's so funny because the man who was actually delivering the insulation, back when I did the insulation, he said to me, "Oh, I did insulation once. I'll never do that again." And I'm thinking, how hard can it be? Like, dude, you're driving this big truck for Home Depot. You're a big burly guy. How hard could it be? Well, I get it. I totally get it. Now, I wouldn't have hired it out. I don't think I would have hired it out. I do like the pride of knowing that I did my own insulation, but I would have gotten help. I probably would have used, I don't know why I used a ladder, but a platform is much easier to use. You have a lot more walking space to kind of maneuver this insulation into the ceiling. But, there's a joy and a pride of doing projects yourself. And yeah, I got it done on my own. Nobody helped with the insulation, but I think I would have asked for help more if I were to do this all over again. It would have saved me a lot of headache. It could have been fun. I could have invited a friend over, ordered pizza, drink beer, and just really made a fun experience of it, versus I'm just in this cold shed by myself and I'm just covered in stuff and I'm itching, and this is not fun. So that's one thing I would have done differently. And another thing that I would have done differently, and I don't know why Tough Shed doesn't install these on their door, because I think other companies do. I don't remember who this was. Somebody was telling me that they had a shed. I think it was just somebody randomly who had sent me an email, and we were talking about our sheds and the different options and things that we had gotten. And I asked them, I said, "Did you get a pan flashing?" And I don't think they knew what that was, but it's basically this piece of plastic that goes underneath of the door. So when you install a door, you want to make sure that the rain is not coming underneath of the door. This is a huge problem that I had, and it doesn't matter how many times, I think it was like twice, Tough Shed sent the contractor out to take care of this. And all he did was come back and he caulked, and I said, "I don't think this is going to help." So I did a little bit of research on my own and found that this piece of plastic goes under the door, and it basically creates a way to capture any water that comes from the outside, right? If the rain is splashing on your door and it gets underneath of your door, the pan flashing prevents that from leaking in. And so when I was talking to this person via email, I said, "Well, did you have leaking?" And he's like, No, I had the pan flashing, and we had talked about it. And Tough Shed, and this was not Tough Shed. They had ordered theirs from a different company. Tough Shed does not install their doors with pan flashing. And I don't understand why that is, because I can't be the only shed that had leaking at both of the interior corners of the door. I cannot be the only person. I have custom doors. Well, I say custom doors. These are the glass paneled doors. That's not an option with Tough Shed. That's not one of the things you can order from them. They have standard doors. But if you want to order your own doors and your own windows, you can order those as long as it has the right specifications. But I had leaking at not only these glass doors, these French doors, but the door that's behind me, which is just the 36 by 80 door, there was also leaking at that door. So I knew that it wasn't just the door. It wasn't, a faulty door from Home Depot. I knew that it had to have been something that was missing. So I did my own research and found out that, pan flashing is what I need. So my shed was still under warranty. They were nice enough to send back the contractor who had installed or who built the shed. And the team took the door out, put the pan flashing in, and I haven't had a problem since. So, before, anytime it would rain, there would be this, "Oh my gosh, is my shed door leaking? Please let it not be leaking." And it would be. But once I got it fixed, I haven't had any problems with leaking. So that's something that I would have done differently if I had known. I don't know how I would have known that until the problem existed, and then I researched. But I'm just telling you that if you were to order a shed from Tough Shed or any other company, whether somebody's coming to build it, if somebody's coming to build it, I think that contractor, you're not going to have to worry about that. But I think sometimes with these prefabricated sheds, I feel like they go up so quickly that sometimes they don't necessarily pay attention to those details. Or I can tell you this as well. My builder was actually very good. And he even told me, he's like, well, I don't know, I can't do anything about the leaking if Tough Shed doesn't provide the materials, right? Like, so this is not this for my shed, this was not a contractor problem. It was a Tough Shed problem. This was a part of the building that they just didn't provide. And so I'm glad that I'd done the research. I was able to find what I needed. By the way, I could not find it at Home Depot. I had to order it from Lowe's, which is very weird. I'm like, why does Home Depot not have these pan flashings? So if you are ordering this pan flashing, which I will leave a link down below, I will link to it from lowes.com. And that's the thing. Sometimes I can't find what I'm looking for at Home Depot. Sometimes I just have to go to Lowe's. I think there's like a little bit of an edge there when it comes to Lowe's having more things in stock. I'm just putting it out there. All right. So those are the things that I would do differently. And there wasn't really that many things. I mean, as I was thinking about this topic and thinking about my shed and how much I love it, I couldn't really come up with that many things I wouldn't do. But I did also want to include things that I'm really glad that I did. And so I want to share those with you too. All right. The size. Let's talk about going big. If you are ordering a shed, go as big as you can. Literally order the biggest shed that you can. And this is going to depend on a couple of things. How much space you have. You have to look at your zoning regulations. For me, the ends of my shed, it couldn't be any closer than 16 feet from my property line. So, the way that my building is situated, it's kind of like catty corner in the back of my yard. And so from those two endpoints in the back of the shed, you've got 16. In fact, I think the concrete guy went in maybe an extra foot. He just wanted to be safe. So I think it's like 17 feet in. So with that being said, I was able to do 16 by 26 and it's perfect. I mean, I wish I could have gone even bigger, but really 16 by 26 it's amazing. When I walk in here, I feel like I've got tons of space. I've done several projects in here where I've had to spread everything out. And it's plenty of space. I still have space for my camera. I can walk around. So go as big as you can. Go as big as you can afford. Go as big as your permitting office will allow you. Because if you only have let's say your backyard is only, X number of feet, you probably can't use up a certain percentage of your total lot. And that's just going to depend on your jurisdiction. But find out before you order your shed. Go as big as you can, because I can guarantee you will always need more space than less space. You will never regret going bigger. All right. Another thing that I'm glad that I did is I'm really glad that I finished the interior myself. So just to recap, I did do the electrical. I did the interior myself. I had an electrical instructor at the community college. I had done a carpentry program at my local community college. And the electrical class that I took, I reached out to him and I was like, hey, do you still have your electrical wiring company? And he's like, yeah, but I think that you can do this yourself, Serena. I'll stop by on my way as needed and you can knock this out. I'll do the panel. I'll do the exterior from connecting it to your house, to your shed, but you can do the interior. And I was like, John, do you think I can do this? Like, I don't know if I can do this myself. And he said, yeah, I think you can do this, Serena. So I did it myself. And I will leave a link down below if you want to look at the videos. There's 2 videos on the wiring that I did. And it was so much fun. It was like a puzzle. And when I first started learning about electrical wiring, I was fearful of it, rightly so. But I also thought that it was going to be boring. Like, why did I think electrical wiring would be boring? It's like a puzzle. You have to figure out how to get the electrons from point A to point B, and you got to go through all these different stops to make sure that everything is wired and has power. It was fascinating. That was probably my favorite part of doing this shed, is the electrical. And it took me a long time. I would say it probably took me like 2 months, 2.5 months. It shouldn't have taken that long. Really, some of it was just procrastination, just unsure of like, oh my gosh, am I doing this right? And I did have his instruction, so I knew that I was doing it right, but it was a little overwhelming at first until I started kind of catching on like, oh, okay, wait, I know what I'm doing. I got this. So that's one thing that I had done. The other thing I did, I told you I did the insulation. I didn't do the drywall. I really wanted this to be seamless. And the funny thing is that I kind of put a little too much insulation in the ceiling, especially where the, right at the top, where the top plate is, where the top plate meets the roof, or the rafters. I put a little bit too much of insulation. And so when the drywall guys were trying to fit it up there, they're like, oh my gosh, this is not. So normally in one sheet of drywall, you would have, I don't know, maybe like 6 to 8 screws, drywall screws. There were certain panels that they put up, they had to have had at least 30 drywall screws. I mean, go back and look at the video. You will actually see some of the crazy like patterns that they needed to do just to get this drywall up into those spots. So yeah, I totally overstuffed it in some areas, but I didn't know what I was doing. Anyway, I enjoyed doing that. I also had done all of the casings, the molding, like around the windows. I did the roller blinds, the DIY roller blinds. If you've seen those behind me, I made those. And it's so funny because sometimes when people see it in the background, they think that it's art. They're like, oh, I love your art on the wall. I'm like, that's not art. That's actually roller blinds. So I did those. I did, oh yeah, because you can actually see the molding around the window back there. So I did all of that molding, and I did the vinyl flooring. And I'm actually going to be doing, like I said, I'm going to be doing a tool wall over here where the workbench is. That is going to be, I don't know, probably in the next 2 months. I just have to figure out how that's going to go. But I'm also going to do the workbench. I'm thinking I'm going to do something with maybe like butcher block, because right now it's just whatever builder grade stuff that they put in over there. So there's a lot of things that I've done on the interior, and I do not regret doing any of them. I love that I finished the interior. Not only did I learn skills, I have a pride when I walk in here because I know how much work it took to get it to this point. And it feels so good knowing that I did it myself. Oh, the other thing that I didn't do is I didn't do the mini split, right? That was an HVAC guy. I didn't handle any of that. And there's no way I could have done that. HVAC, definitely you can't handle that yourself. Like you need to have a licensed HVAC installer for that. So yeah, I'm glad that I did the finishing the interior myself. I also am glad that I did the scissor truss. Now, when I ordered my Tough Shed, they didn't actually tell me that scissor truss were an option. I kind of found it on their blog. So typically your building is going to have trusses, right? And you're going to have a ceiling that's just, 8-foot ceiling, and it's just going to be flat and level. Well, on their blog, I happened to see that there was a woman who turned her shed into a workout room, like an exercise space. And it said, one of the things that she upgraded was the truss. She did a scissor truss. So it gives you a little bit more interior headspace, and it gives it kind of a slightly vaulted feel to it or look to it, which I liked. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, well, if I'm working on projects and I'm turning around like sheets of plywood and I'm lifting it up, I just want as much headspace as possible. And I just think it feels more open and spacious. And I'm glad that I did skylights. Now, I don't open them up during the day. I have blinds. That's another thing that I did. I installed blinds where the 4 skylights are. And it can get very, very hot in your shed. Keep this in mind if you are ordering a shed. if you do skylights, it can get very, very hot. So just keep that in mind. You will have to probably install some blinds, but make sure that you do the blinds that are the light filtering. You don't want the kind of blinds that are going to completely block out the sun. That makes it pointless. So I like that it's light and airy in here. And when I want direct sunlight, I can just open them up very easily. So that's one thing that I'm glad that I did. I'm also glad that I did a lot of the landscaping around my shed. I didn't want my shed to feel like it was just plopped down in my backyard, that it wasn't a part of my house. But the way that I've done all of the landscaping, I did it, I guess it was probably about a year or so ago. And the way that I did the landscaping and then having it come back in the spring, it really feels like it's a part of my backyard. It feels so homey. I love it. I love it. It's beautiful. Like when the flowers start blooming in the spring. And I tried to choose things that had a little bit of visual interest, especially come fall, because I want to see the leaves change. Oh, and I also got what is it called? Is it a blue star? I can't remember what it is, but is it Kentucky blue star? It might be like a Kentucky blue star, but it's on the side of my shed. And in the fall, it just turns this beautiful golden color. Some time ago, maybe 3-4 years ago, I was visiting my mom, and they've got this blue star in like there's a little garden area there, but it's just this big, like oval, beautiful color in the fall. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, what is that? And I remember I posted it on Facebook and someone told me what it was. Well, I found a nursery online. I ordered it. I mean, when it came last year, it was just like this. Oh, it was small. It was like 6 inches. It was so cute. And now the thing is growing out of control, and it's going to look amazing probably like in the next month. So I'm really glad that I took the time to sculpt the shed to make it look like it was part of my backyard. So, it's taken a lot of money and a lot of time. Those plants are not cheap. If you've ever done some gardening projects, you know that they're very expensive. But if you're buying things that come back, that are perennials, that are coming back year after year, I mean, you buy it once and it just comes back every year, and it just creates this beautiful landscape for your shed so that it doesn't feel like, just this building that you plopped in your backyard. You really want it to feel homey and beautiful. And so now when I look at it, when I stand back and take pictures, I can't believe that this is mine, that I did all of this work. Oh, another thing going back, I totally skipped this one. One thing that I would always recommend if you are ordering a shed, and this is one thing on my list of things that I wish I would have done. I really wish I would have found out what are all the things that are optional that I can choose. Because sometimes I don't think they make it very clear. You can do a little quote online, and they have some things that are customizable, but there's things that are listed. There's things that are not listed on that order page, that customized page, that you didn't even know. Like, for example, soffit vents, right? Before I was going to do the insulation, I realized like, whoa, wait a minute. I've got a ridge vent, right? That was optional. I've got a ridge vent, but I don't have soffit vents. And the soffit vents are those little vents that go underneath the eaves of your soffits, right? That's where the fresh air from outside is going to come in and go up through the roof into the ridge vent and exit out. And they didn't even tell me that that was an option. I wish I would have known. They didn't tell me. So and I ended up having to install them myself. Now, was it a big deal? Not really, because I was able to get them in there pretty easily, but that's one less thing that I would have had to focus on if I had known up front, hey, what are all of your optional things that I can choose? The ridge vent, the soffit vent, the windows, the doors. I didn't have to choose these windows. I could have been like, you know what? Here are the windows that I want to use. I'm going to pay for an upgrade, because the windows that they supplied, they're okay, but they're not great windows. They're not really good quality windows. And even though I think it's like the upgraded window, it's still not as good as a window if I had gone to Home Depot or whatever and ordered my own window. So keep that in mind as well when you're ordering your shed. Make sure you find out all the things that are customizable so that you can make as good of a decision as possible. And you can decide up front if this is something that you need or you don't need. And, they're not necessarily going to tell you all of those things for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe I just had a bad salesperson. Okay, so those are just some things that I wish I would have changed or would have done differently or wish I would have known, and things that I am completely happy about. Now that things are all said and done, it's been 2 years. Would I have done this whole experience again? Yes. Yes, yes, yes. I cannot tell you how good it feels when I walk into my shed. It feels wonderful. I walk in and I greet my space. Yes, that is weird. I actually walk in and say, hello, she shed. I greet my space. And you know where I got that from? 2016, I read a book by Marie Kondo called The Magic Art of Tidying Up. And I thought that was such a weird thing that she did. She said, you should thank your purse. You should thank your dishes for like serving you food and holding your food, like all this crazy stuff. And she's like, and you should, greet a room when you walk into it. And I'm like, really? Like greeting a room? Are you kidding me? But I tried it. And guess what? I liked it. And I still do it. Now when I go into my shed, when I come in here, I greet my shed. It does something to the energy in the space. It just makes it feel happier, I guess. So maybe try it next time you walk into your bedroom or you walk into your house. Greet your house. I mean, it's still a crazy idea, but I like it. But it feels good. It feels good knowing that I have this space and that it's quiet, it's private, it's mine. And that's another thing that I like too. I like that this feels like it's mine. I don't feel like this is, my husband, he lives here with me. And so, well, technically it's his too. No, it's not. I paid for it myself. I did all the work myself. He actually didn't even want me to get the shed. He thought I was just doing too much. Like I was being too extra. He thought I was being like, my husband likes simplicity. He doesn't like to plan and manage and do all of those things. So the fact that I was having to pull together like the permit and do all this work, he was like, why are you doing this? But it was worth it to me. And it feels like it's mine. It's something that I feel like I've got something to show for what I've done. And it's taught me a lot of things along the way. So you can tell that I love my shed. I feel like I should have named my shed. As much as I'm in love with my shed, I should have named my shed. But I don't have a name. It's just she shed. I don't know. Maybe we'll think about it. Anyway, that's this week's episode. I was supposed to talk about engravers. I've got this engraver for those of you who didn't hear last week's episode. I got this new engraver from X-Tool. It's called the P2. It's a CO2 engraver, and it's sitting right over there, which you can't see because I'm not turning the camera, but you got to come back because probably this week, I'm going to be uploading the video showing you how I set up this engraver. And I'll talk about, I don't know a lot about engravers because it's just not my background. But this is a new area that I'm getting into. And I would like to add this to my tools, my DIY toolbox, because I do find that there will be a value with being able to possibly start being able to sell merch, right? Thrift diving merch, things that I can cut, engrave here in the shed. I can also start an Etsy shop. And honestly, several years ago, I actually tried to start an Etsy shop and sold a couple of handmade wooden notebooks and engraved them by hand. That was not easy to do. And looking back, it seems almost ridiculous that I had done that because it took me forever to just cut one wooden notebook. I mean, gosh, I don't know. I think I sold like 3 of them. And then after I was done that, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be taking this listing down. This is not cool. But now with the engraver, I can actually make the wooden notebooks very easily. I can engrave whatever, someone's name on the front or an image, anything, and be able to sell those. And part of this that I think is pretty important is that I want to show my children that they can actually create products and sell things online. And if you have the right tools, like an engraver, now this engraver is pretty expensive. This one that Xtool sent is like a $4,500 engraver. It's overkill, but it does a lot of cool things. And I will talk and share that with you, especially in a YouTube video very soon. But there's smaller engravers that you can get for like $600, $800. And the things that you can engrave and sell, I mean, you can make earrings, you can make any of those things. You can engrave tumblers. Selling those things can bring in extra money. And then it can also be just a way for you to, I don't know, express yourself and be able to share gifts and ideas or gifts with people like at Christmas time or birthdays or whatever. So that's going to be coming up, but I got to do a little bit more research because there's so many things that you can cut on this. I feel like I'm at a loss for what I know how to do. So I got to kind of get myself up to speed before I can kind of show you what can be done. But that's going to be coming up in an upcoming episode, a YouTube video, of course. But I want to know from you, is a she shed something that you would want for yourself? And do you have one already? Possibly. I do hear from a lot of people that are like, oh my gosh, my shed is coming, or I got my shed and I'm trying to do this and I'm trying to do that. I love hearing about people's sheds and projects that they're working on. So if you have a she shed that you're proud of and maybe you've learned some lessons along the way, send me pictures of it. I want to see it. Just send it to Serena@thriftdiving.com. That's my email. Or you can hit me up on Instagram @thriftdiving. And I will definitely look at your pictures, enjoy your projects the way you've enjoyed mine on YouTube and on my blog. But come back next week because we're always doing something cool here at Thrift Diving. If you're new to the podcast, be sure to subscribe where you get your podcast on Apple, Google, wherever it is that you listen, Stitcher, Spotify. I'm all over those places. All right, come back and I will see you next episode.
Diving. Find it ugly, make it pretty. Paint and power tools, alright. Saving money with those thrift store vibes. Yeah, thrift diving. Find it